Hello everyone and Happy New Year. We're back and we have a brand new Q&A session. You asked and I answered. I'm going to answer. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into it. Shade Yoshi 5879 says, what made you start making videos? This was actually back in the days of what is today known as Channel Awesome, back then was known as That Guy with the Glasses, but I found the idea of internet reviews pretty cool. I didn't think I'd be making any myself, but one particular user, Paw, had started uploading Let's Plays. I had heard of Let's Plays at the time, but I figured they were a waste of my time, because either I already knew the game and therefore did not need to watch, or I did not know the game and therefore do not want to be spoiled, so I should not watch. So why would I do this? But at some point he uploaded King's Quest V, and other than my immediate family and my cousins, I think I had known one person who had ever touched the King's Quest series, and I was like, oh, it's the thing, it's the thing! Like, nobody talks about King's Quest V, at least nobody I knew. So I was excited to see his take on it, and that's what awakened me to the idea of watching Let's Plays not just for the game, but also for the player. He had clever editing and things like that, and little jokes thrown in here and there. So I was like, oh, interesting. Maybe I should do King's Quest VI. That's the one that I particularly grew up with, and I eventually did. That wasn't my first Let's Play, but I got there. That was what incentivized me to start in the first place. So it all sprung up from there. Wesley Machado 1061. What's your most memorable gaming experience? That is hard. There are a lot. I don't know if you mean particular moments in games or the games themselves. Like, some of my earliest were playing Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game on NES, or X-Men arcade game, the actual arcade game, Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and Link to the Past at my friend's house back in elementary or middle school. Maybe upper elementary, because I wouldn't have been like 6 or 7 or anything like that, but let's lean a little toward the middle school direction, probably. There's been later moments as I grew up, you know, with the GameCube and stuff like that, seeing Metal Gear Solid 2's demo for the first time. There's a bunch of really good stuff in there. Have you ever played the Mass Effect franchise, and if so, what's your favorite of them? No. I should, though. I hear it's one of the greats, I just never touched it. Are you hyped for Eiyuden Chronicle? Yeah, of course. I backed it. I'm trying to play through the Suikoden games first, but Eiyuden is going to be a spiritual successor to those, so I'm very curious and excited to see what it's going to be. Demolition Dude, if carrots are good for your eyes, can they dial a phone? I'm not entirely sure I get that. Like, is this an iPhone pun or something? I don't get it. Carrot style? I don't, that one's over my head, sorry. The Magnus, any new games that you're playing that you enjoy? Yeah, I find that I'm really enjoying Dead Cells. I did that on stream briefly, and I'm getting better at it. I still haven't made it to the end of an entire run, but I've beaten 3 bosses so far. The game's super exciting and has unbelievable pixel art, and I just started Remnant 2 recently, and that's going to be another endeavor, I'm sure. But I've already beaten a world boss. Triptech. How old are you? 37. Favorite console generation? That's tough. It's either going to be my first, the Genesis and SNES era, or maybe the GameCube PS2 era. It's tough. What made you focus on the horror genre? I don't know. I got into horror in general through the Resident Evil remake on the GameCube, because that's the system that I had. When I eventually got a PS2, I just sort of dove into it. I don't know, I'm not even 100% sure I know why, but the games are quite enjoyable. Mr. Graham735, what motivated you to start a YouTube channel? Okay, I covered that part, although if you want me to be more specific to YouTube, back in those days I had made a blip.tv channel, but Blip just started to die, and YouTube was less restrictive by the time I got to it, so that's how I shifted to YouTube in 2012, 2013, something like that. Are there any fan projects you're looking forward to? Not typically. I usually stick with official stuff. I don't really look into fan projects. If something's pointed out to me, maybe I'll take a look, but I don't usually go scouring through fan adaptations or mods or anything like that. Silent Pain. I can't remember if I've asked this before, but so I'll ask it here. What are some examples from every medium, book, movie, video game, etc., that you have great memories of, but you cannot recommend to play, watch, read, for whatever reason? I have some. For movies, I'll say Revenge of the Nerds. I liked it just fine when I watched it, but there's a certain highly problematic element late in the movie where someone learns a valuable lesson. They were fooled once, but now they know they shouldn't judge people based on appearances, but the way that lesson was taught, like, I honestly can't believe it made it into the movie even in the 80s, and it wouldn't have a chance in hell today. Not to mention the whole premise of the movie is just being creepers anyway. For books, I'll say Harry Potter. I read them within 2 weeks, sometimes even within a week of their release, because my brother got them on the midnight release, and the fact that I was reading them a week to 2 weeks after they released shows you just how fast he burned through them, and then I burned through them as well. And I like them just fine. But there are 2 reasons I'd probably say no today. One of them, probably the obvious one, is the author, but the other one is stuff I mostly missed when I was a kid. But they have their heavily stereotypical elements based on people's names and actions. There was one stereotype that I caught instantly due to my upbringing. I missed a bunch of others, and when they were pointed out to me, it was like, oh, yikes. So there's more of that, huh? The video games were fun, but still, I'm not fun than the author. Well, I say the video games were fun. I played the Lego one. The Lego 2, I guess, those were fun. The PS1 game, or the old PC game, I remember thinking it looked cool, but I didn't play it. My brother did, but that looked fun. What are you gonna do? And for video games, I don't know if I have a specific, oh, I wouldn't play this if I were you, but there's a certain, it's not a trope, but there's a certain type of edginess that the PS3 360 era had that it was supposed to be interesting for its shock value then, but I don't know, it's just kind of like, oh, so this is what you were doing in the 2000s kind of thing. The super grisly, like, torture scenes, The Darkness had one, although that was in the first person, so you didn't really see it. Silent Hill Homecoming had a torture scene you had to QTE your way through, that's super unpleasant to watch. GTA 5 has a torture scene that you are the torturer in. The idea is to show you how terrible it is, but it is terrible. Dead Space 2 had the eye surgery thing. There's a lot of like, ooh, like from back in that era. The Saw games, I mean, that's the whole premise, so, you know, I get it, but it's still just kind of like, I don't want to at this point. And the other question is, what are some things or mechanics that come from old school games, Doom 1 and 2, Blood, Duke Nukem, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Deus Ex 1, etc., etc., that have aged like old milk and should not come back from those days if they're ever remade for current-gen equipment? I will say, Doom 1, you could save whenever you want, which is great, so you generally avoid this problem, but one thing that's really frustrating is if you die in Doom and you don't have a load, you just respawn, you start at the level you died at, but with no equipment. You get 100% health, but you have just a pistol. And that makes some levels excruciating to get through. You couldn't just start with your weapon loadout. Like, it's pretty rough. I would at least do some sort of autosave at the beginning of the level, or do some things that newer games do, which is just bring it back with full health. Like, it's fine. User KG1SW3HN4T. Will you ever do a crossover with another YouTuber, Linkara, for example? You know, funny you should mention that. I have, with Linkara, actually. I'll put the link to that video in the description of this one, but I covered the Killer 7 comic book with him. We met over a MagFest, and we did a review of the comic books, all of the comics that there were and are. The story was never finished, but we made it up to where you meet Almeida. That was pretty cool. Have you played the new Texas Chainsaw game? Nope, don't care. Would you like to see a Clockworks 4, or are you happy with it ending as a trilogy? I'm assuming you mean Clock Tower? I mean, I'm okay with it ending as a trilogy. I don't even know if I'd call it a trilogy so much as I would 3 games. Clock Tower 3 is a whole different animal. It's even from a different company. There sort of are others, though. There's Haunting Ground, and there's Nightcry. Nightcry was even made by the original dev. What are the pics of hanging on your wall? You know what? Good question. Behind me is, like right behind me, is a Pulp Fiction poster that has some of the autographs casts. My parents had gotten that for me a long time ago. That was unbelievable. Also, a surprising decision for them. It's not like they're super into Pulp Fiction or Tarantino or anything, but hey, it's a great movie. Over here, if you could see that, is it was from an Otakon convention little booklet. Here's what you can do at Otakon, the convention. And it had some of the people who were there for autographs. This celebrity will be at this convention. And that's Crispin Freeman, and I embarrassingly did not have anything for him to autograph at the time, so I had him sign his page. Today, I would probably bring the Slayers DVDs. That's the first thing I ever saw him in, and then, in fact, I think it's his first big voice acting gig. He was Zelgadis starting in the latter half of the first season. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe I could bring a copy of Judgment for PS4 or something, because he was Kaito in that, I think? Or God of War 3. He's done a bunch of really cool stuff. Xenosaga, oh my god. I don't know if you can see the pictures a little off to the side, but there's a manatee in one, and there's, it's not the real thing, of course, it's just a copy, but of the patent, like the working design for Scrabble, which is just kind of cool. T.S. Neff, I know you've played Onimusha on the channel. Have you played any of the sequels? If so, do you have any thoughts on the series? Yeah, I've played 2 and 3. I have Dawn of Dreams, I have not played it, but I've played the trilogy. They're very good. 2 is a completionist's nightmare, because there are different scenes you can get depending on which, I'll just call them social links, that you've gone higher on. But it's a very fun game, and 3 is just nuts. 3 might be my favorite. 1 is Resident Evil with swords. 2 and 3 go a little past that. It's not as strictly Resident Evil as 1 was, but they're very good. And 3 has one of my favorite opening PS2 FMVs ever. It's ridiculous. It's so good. Neon Wave, what are the top 3 games you enjoyed and disliked playing for Let's Plays this year? Or just in general, whichever list would be easier. I'm not going to do disliked, and full disclosure, I am not including Patreon requests in either list anyway, just because I don't want there to be a situation, oh, I liked this other person's request more than I liked your request, or your request was in my bottom 3. I'm not doing that. So, I put a whole lot of time and effort into Neo 2. I enjoyed that quite a bit. That wasn't a Let's Play or anything, but I have the boss fights on my channel. Super Mario RPG, I stream that. I love that game, and I love playing it again. And I'm not going to pick one game, so I'll just say King's Quest, the King's Quest games, because I streamed them all. And I Let's Played 8, and I Let's Played 6, like a decade ago. They're so good, and I got a nostalgic feeling even from the ones I hadn't played, like 3. 3 is really, really good. Elemental Hero Joe. Besides piano, did you learn to play other musical instruments growing up? Nope. What are your favorite food dishes during Thanksgiving and Christmas? Maybe brisket if they have it. We don't really do anything for Christmas. I don't celebrate Christmas. But Thanksgiving, brisket, I'm not really a turkey guy. Which franchise did you enjoy most? Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, or Star Trek? I've only ever seen Star Trek 2009 and The Wrath of Khan, both of which I liked. I understand that 2009 was Star Wars if it were Star Trek, but I like both movies for different reasons. But that's all I got for Star Trek, so that's not going to be my answer. Star Wars, I loved the original trilogy, and I watched the videotapes from the library over and over again as a kid. But the series, as it expanded and expanded, I got less and less interested in it. I've seen almost none of the side stuff. I've played some of the video games, but as far as the big Star Wars stuff, I've really only seen the 9 movies, and I just got more and more out of the series. So probably Lord of the Rings. It's just a one and done. 3. There you go. I didn't bother with The Hobbit. The trilogy of Lord of the Rings was just great. I read the books. I was kind of like, I don't know when I read them in college, but I was much more into them when I read them in whatever year it was, 2022 maybe. General Apparel West. Game collection / merch tour? Probably not. I could point out some individual things. Should I feel the interest, like, oh, take a look at this thing, but I'm not gonna just go through my shelves. Ellie Lee 5708. Who do you prefer, Sonic or Shadow? If you asked me this 15 years ago, I would have said Shadow hands down, but today, maybe Sonic, just because Shadow hit all the right buttons back when I was in, like, early 2000s edgy teenager phase, but it comes off a little try-hard now, especially the comical Shadow the Hedgehog video game where he's just running around with guns. It's like, oh my god, like, it's so try-hard that it ends up being unintentionally funny. Channel Now 5845. Out of all the games you've played, which one gives you the most nostalgic feeling? That's tough to say, but I certainly got nostalgia from playing Super Mario RPG this year, because even though it had been over like 10 years since I played it, I knew just about all the beats. I don't remember all the hidden chests so well, but I haven't played that game over and over and over again, but I just know it. It's so fun. Adi Evil, you mentioned in older Q&As you played some of Koei's Warriors / Musou games. I was wondering which ones in particular are your favorites. I'm a huge fan of the series, and it's always cool to find out other people like them. I don't have extensive experience with them. The main things I remember are Fist of the North Star and One Piece. And they're all good. Fist of the North Star 2 plays better, but I like 1 for the same reason that I like One Piece Pirate Warriors 2, which is that they're original stories. I know that a lot of the fun is getting to relive your favorite iconic moments from the series, but I also like not doing that 4 games in a row. Yes, we beat that big boss. We beat Sir Crocodile again. Like, it's really cool, but I get it. So, Pirate Warriors 2 was just a completely unique story, and Fist of the North Star 1 was the main story, but it had sort of a what-if mode, which was kind of nice, because at that point I don't know where it's going. And I have not played Hyrule Warriors yet, but I really want to. That game looks just great. Akira Strix 94. When it comes to franchises you've tackled already, which ones would you say you like the most? That's tough. I do like Souls. I do like Silent Hill. I do like Fatal Frame. I don't know if I'd call Super Mario RPG a franchise, but I like that one a lot. I like Streets of Rage in general. Buckers 107. Is there any good anime you're watching? I'm watching One Piece, that's really it. I was keeping up with Attack on Titan, but somehow the stars aligned and the series finally ended. I never thought I'd see the day. Jin SS 2535. Since it's out now, how are you liking the Talos Principle 2? That is, if you've got the game and played it. Don't know. Don't have it. I've heard nothing but good things, though. Tony9363. How many game systems do you own? How many games do you have total? Don't know, don't know. Like, I'm not going to do an exhaustive inventory. Even of the systems, it's like a bunch. What state do you live in? New Jersey. Ross, YU5PV. For the rest of your life, would you rather have someone else pick all of your meals or all of your clothes? Assuming no trolling, I guess clothes? I don't know if it really matters. Groovy George 6375. Would you rather live in a magical medieval fantasy world with dragons, wizards, kings and queens and swords and all that, or a futuristic cyberpunk world with android tech, holograms, flying cars, and all that Blade Runner stuff? Dragons would suck because that's just like a conscious natural disaster, but at the same time, usually fantasy worlds are not framed from the very beginning as a dystopian hellscape, and cyberpunk is. So I really hesitate to say this, but maybe fantasy. Normally I would probably like cyberpunk because it's a little closer to the real world, but cyberpunk worlds suck by design. Yancey, what games did you enjoy streaming or recording this year the most? Again, I might go with Super Mario RPG, although I've just started Terranigma, and I am loving it so far. What game was the longest or hardest at getting every trophies at? Probably Isaac, like the third time. It's just endless. I didn't even bother the fourth time. Remnant from the Ashes, the first one. It's not so terrible, but the DLC has buy X number of costumes from Whisper that require this currency that is extremely slow to get. That took forever. Also Neo 1 and its DLC. I just did Neo 2 and its DLC this year, and you better believe that was hard, but I still don't think I had as much trouble as I did with Neo 1 and its DLC. Cryptic. What are some good YouTubers you enjoy that are not within the gaming side of creators? I like Red Letter Media, Allison Prebular, Phalis. They're really fun to watch in the movie and TV show side of things. What are some good shows or media that you watch that aren't gaming related? I'm following Rick and Morty now, and as I said, One Piece. I don't really watch that much TV, to be honest. Dragon Chi. When might we start seeing Switch game LPs? I don't know. Like, I'm one of those people that's very hesitant to unplug and start plugging in systems. Like, I'll get to it. There are definitely Switch games I want to play. I have a bunch of Switch games that I'm interested in playing, but I'm also lazy. I will tell you, though, I definitely have a Switch game that's on my Patreon list, so it's happening. Also, a game coming up very soon, not my next one, but it's coming up very soon, is a game that I don't play on the Switch, but it was a Switch exclusive for a time. Jose the Milk Argian Barha, if I said that right? 7059. I have a couple of questions. Do you have any kids? No. If you do or don't, would you encourage them to play old video games instead of recent ones? I might start them on old ones. I wouldn't do one or the other, like, oh, I don't want you playing new video games, but it would be kind of interesting showing them how they evolved, because I work in education. You know, like, I've tutored middle school kids, for example, and if gaming does come up, inevitably, there's going to be, well, why would you play an old game? It's old. You know, what's the point? To which I would say, because it's good. Like, think of the cool games that you're playing right now. In 10 years, would you ask yourself, why would you ever play that? It's 10 years old, you know? Well, you liked it then, didn't you? So I would imagine the same thing. You know, showing kids some old games. You don't even have to break out your old systems. There's like the Genesis collection on PS4 or whatever. Look, this is what games were like when I was a kid. That kind of thing. You could show them a little bit of it, compare the old to the new, and how very different it is. They are. Foxadeo, what is your opinion on the Metal Gear / Metal Gear Solid series? I like what I've seen of Metal Gear, but I've never played it. Metal Gear Solid I like quite a bit, although I have not played 5, or any of the spin-off games. Peace Walker I think is still mainline. I'm counting Peace Walker. So I've played... Technically I have not played 1. Believe it or not. I played Twin Snakes, so I've played 1. But I haven't played actual PlayStation 1 Metal Gear Solid 1. But I've played 1 Twin Snakes, 2, 3 Peace Walker, and 4. So I've played most of the mainline entries. I like them quite a bit. And then, do you have a favorite one? Probably 2. 3 and 4 play better, but 2 blew my mind as a kid. I have nostalgia for it. It might take you a little bit of time to get used to the fixed camera angles if you've never played Metal Gear Solid before. If you just picked up the recent remaster collection, oh boy, I could finally play the trilogy. And then you play 1 and 2, and you're like, oh, this is weird. but I like 2 quite a bit, and the subversion it does toward the end is just insane. It's pretty fantastic to experience, especially if you have no idea what's coming. With certain codec calls toward the end, those are fun and a half. But there you have it. Those are the questions that I have gotten for this particular session. I hope that my answers have been adequate. Thank you all very much for the questions, and of course for your support. Once again, Happy New Year, and we'll see what exciting new things it has to bring. Until next time, everyone.